Hey guys, what's up? My name is Will and welcome to Will React. Usually what I do on here every single time is to react to Nigerian sounds. But some of you already know that. In this video, I'll be doing the entire album review of Burna Boy's I Told Them. And what I'll be doing is I'll be taking it beat by beat, but I'll try as much as possible not to bore you guys with each of the track review up until we do a general album review. So I don't want to just say the album is a 10, the album is a 5 or 2, but I want to actually break down what each track is all about before we get to like the final album review and what I think of the album generally. So don't go nowhere. This is how we do it. So generally for me, I Told Them has got to be like one of the best songs on the album and surprisingly one of the funniest songs on the album. The reason for that is because I Told Them is supposed to be like the first track and the name of the album. So which means that to Burna Boy, that is like the biggest song on the album. But surprisingly, it is not as you'd expect when you have a song. So first off, what is the song about? The song actually is a message for his detractors, for those who doubted him over time, for those who thought he wasn't going to be like a big deal in the music industry, for those who looked down on him. And this is him, coming back with a clap back to like say that, I told you guys, right? But the one thing about this song that makes it very unique is the sound. The instrumentation is wild, like very sick. It is very good. But the one thing also that kind of makes it, the song in itself, very funny or somehow is the fact that for the song that is your album title, you only sang just 1 minute and 30 seconds. I mean, if you compare this particular song and Twice as Tall, the song, not the album, you would realize that there is a whole lot of difference in there. The first thing is that Twice as Tall, but the whole length of the song in itself was 4 minutes 29 seconds, if I recall, and Yusu Ndio did not exactly do anything more than the chorus or whatever, or the chants that ran through the entire song. So Burna Boy had more time to talk about his journey and why he thinks he's twice as tall, and he actually had enough time to say that. But here I felt like he should have had more time to himself to be able to do the whole thing, and that brings me to the collaboration. Personally, I don't think that the collaboration was necessary. It wasn't. He could have, Burna Boy, knowing the kind of talent he is, would have been able to deliver 100% without that collaboration. But what is funny about that collaboration is the fact that it wasn't like a rap, it was a spoken word that came at the end of the whole thing. So he just spent like 1 minute 30 seconds in the song and just repetition that led up to the spoken words. And the truth is, the spoken word was so deep that a lot of people who are not exactly into poetry or anything related might not be able to like catch what Giza was talking about. The little 1 minute 30 seconds he had, he talked to his detractors, addressed them and a lot of things and what have you. But the one thing also I seem to have problem with was the fact that for a song that is supposed to be a victory lap, he was very angry. And I felt like he had no reason to be angry, because if you're doing a kind of song like that, where you are coming back to say, you know what, I told you guys I'm going to like do better, your mood, your tone, all of that should not come off as very bitter, as very angry. But that was not the case with Burna in the song. He was so angry that he called them the B word. And in my head, I kind of felt like, why are you still angry? It's a big success for you. You're celebrating like a very 7th studio album. This is like an album. And this is like your 7th project already. But then you were still angry. It's almost as if those he was referring to are still winning and he was still like fighting very hard. So generally speaking, I think the song is a very good song. But I hate the fact that it's a very short song. Particularly, he only did like 1 minute 30 seconds. And then Giza came on to round off and all that. I would have wanted something similar to Twice as Tall, where he had enough time to pour out his mind. Twice as Tall was almost 5 minutes. This one generally he only did like 1 minute 30 seconds. So if you see the difference in the whole thing, it's not just 8 for me. But the beat is a solid 10. And the whole kung fu thing at the end, towards the end of the thing, I think was unnecessary. But I understand the fact that Giza is a member of the Wu-Tang clan, but it was overused. I just feel it wasn't necessary. If you're going to come back and do something that has to do with spoken words, I was going to probably want to see some mellow effects in there, strings sort of, but not Chinese, whatever like that. I mean, that's it for this particular one. So let's talk about the second song on the album, Normal. The beat is very sick. Like, the beat is very, very good. And I enjoy the whole thing from start to finish for this particular song. And I also like the fact that he took his time to address a lot of issues in this track. So for the record, if you're not Nigerian, you're wondering like, what is normal? What does that mean? So typically it's like our way of saying as usual, as always, whatever like that. But he's just came on to say like, you know what? In the end, people will talk, right? As always, people will always say some things about you, whether or not you try to be righteous, whether or not you try to be holy, whether or not you try to play like the devil. So regardless, just go ahead and do whatever it is you want to do. I mean, that's about the only way people will not get to judge you unfairly, because if you pay attention to people, they will always talk. So that's him, being defiant. And I think the way I get to interpret the song is that he's very defiant. And he doesn't care about a lot of things, including societal rules. First off is the fact that he said, monogamy is overrated. And he doesn't buy the idea of monogamy, contrary to what a lot of people and society has put in place as rule and law. So he doesn't agree. Then he talked about women as well, that he doesn't do one woman. So it has to be more than one for him. And that's a follow-up on, the monogamy thing. And then he talked about the idea of falling in love, that he's not the kind of person to fall in love, right? So he's like, he doesn't like to catch feelings. So generally speaking, he also actually took the time to talk about his life, and not giving thoughts to what people would say. And I kind of like that idea a whole lot, because I mean, everybody should actually get to the point where you give no sense about opinions, what people think of you, what people would say about the things you're doing. Rather focus on what makes you happy and what you enjoy doing. I mean, people might say, because you don't flow in our line of thoughts, you could be in trouble, but who cares? Just do what brings you happiness at the end of the day and enjoy what you want to do. So that's pretty much everything about the song. But the one thing I hate a lot about this song is the Chinese effect again at the end of the song. Because in my head, I was kind of wondering like, this is not even necessary. There is no member of the Wu-Tang clan in the song. It's just him alone. But then they are coming back again with that Kung Fu Chinese thing. And in my head, I was kind of wondering like, is this really necessary at all? So generally speaking, if I were to rate this, the beats, the lyrics, I think I would like say a very good 7. And the reason I'm actually just withdrawing back on the remaining 3 was the fact that I just think the whole Chinese Kung Fu thing is becoming abused at this point. Maybe those producers were like, let's just put this thing and see what it's, maybe it's good. Let's just be putting it and all that. But generally, that's that about this particular one. So let me know what you guys think. So the third song on the album, On Form, has got to be like one very good song for me. The reason for that largely is because it's like the purest Afrobeat song on the album. And Afrobeat cannot be purer than this. This is Afrobeat, like at the very height of it. It's so raw, it's so pure. And the whole voiceover thing, like the backup voice and all that, is giving this Ashake effect, like how Ashake would actually back up in the song or harmonize in the own song. So you can easily, in fact, the first time I heard this, the one thing I told myself was, is that Ashake or something? I thought it was a feature with him included in the song, but apparently he's not even included in the song. So the beats is actually very sick, like very good. But otherwise, you want to look at what On Form is about. On Form is actually talking about the fact that he's currently in form, like he's very hot. And also he didn't actually waste time to talk about his detractors. And he talked about not trusting man, not trusting even his own shadow. And talking about the fact that the industry wanted to shame him and he actually confessed that it was a story of his life. It's all in the track. But the one thing again is the fact that I feel that if he was going to talk about on form, he should have focused more on the fact that he should have actually talked a lot about his own success and how he thinks he's on form. That is what I was, more like looking towards when I completely listened to the song, and I was coming back to like, what could he have done differently? I think he probably should have focused more on his own successes, his own victories, his own sold out concerts around Europe, around the world. His features, his numbers on charts, and a lot of those things. But he didn't rather talk about those things too much. Rather, he focused more on, his haters and, the fact that don't trust anybody. So in a way, it comes off as, I wouldn't say maybe a bit unhappy, but he bragged about the fact that he was on form, but I just hated the fact that he still really had time to reserve, some space for his haters. One way to tell how far you're growing is not to even consider that you're not even give thoughts to your haters. But when you're saying you're on form and you're talking about haters every minute, I'm not exactly sure you're on form. That's my opinion of the whole thing. It's just like someone posting, pictures of your success or whatever on social media every single time, and then you are still reserving a message for your haters. At some point, you want to get out of the whole thing, and that's what I think he hasn't been able to do yet. And again, also one thing I hate about the song is the fact that it had that Chinese thing again in this particular track. And in my head, I was wondering at this period, like, has Burna Boy eventually become a part of the Wu-Tang clan? It's fine if he is, but this is actually for me not a way to say that you're a part of the clan. But whatever producer or whatever label is forcing this whole thing on the sound kind of makes it look very ugly at this point, because it's not even something to enjoy, particularly when you're driving and then you're hearing that Chinese effect. For me, it's overused at this point, right? And I don't think that for any reason it should actually be this repetitive. It's getting annoying to my ears right now. But generally speaking, if I were to rate on form, I think I'd say 6. 6 because he actually reserved time to talk about his detractors more, than give thoughts to his form. I was thinking it was going to like take time to explain his form, but overall the beat for me is a 10-10. That beat, you cannot compromise on that beat. It's a 10-10. But the lyrics generally for me, it did it well. Like, I mean, it's Burna Boy is very versatile. He's very good with what he does, but he should have actually covered a lot of grounds other than focus on some things he wasn't supposed to focus on. But I mean, that's it for me for this song. The Chinese thing, please, I just hope I don't get to hear it in the next one, or I don't get to comment about it. So the next song on the album, Sitting on Top of the World, featuring 21 Savage. For me, anybody who lived, older people who lived in the era of the 80s and 90s and maybe 20,000s, like, I don't know, but the era of Ja Rule, Jay-Z, DMX, Ashanti, and a lot of those guys, you would understand what this song is all about. Like, the first time I actually, I'm sorry I'm having to pop because I'm popping on songs I really enjoy a lot. So, but it's just crazy when I listen to this. And the first thing that came to your head was, did Burna Boy really sing this? Because I kept wondering to myself, like, how was he able to pull this off? Like, it was so good. Like, I kind of started wondering, like, how was Burna Boy really able to do this? But kudos to the producers for this, because there is no way he would have actually been able to like come and do this. So Sitting on Top of the World for me has got to be like one of the best songs out there. And what makes this song very good, apart from the fact that we're leaving that era, is that it has a bit of the genre is called hip hop soul. For those who don't know, this is not Afrobeat, this is not Afrofusion, this is like hip hop and soul. So this is like a fusion of hip hop and soul. And how do you get to know that? Is because the song in itself is like R&B, and then there is like the rap thing in it. So Usually any song in that manner is actually referred to as a hip hop soul genre. But the fact that Burna Boy held his own well in the song goes on to prove how versatile he is. And on the most serious note, anybody sleeping on Burna's, versatility right now is joking. Like, he's so good, and I kept on wondering, like, how can you be doing dancehall, be doing reggae, be doing this, and then you're not coming back to hip hop and soul in your own album? He has to be very good to be actually able to pull that off. I mean, but kudos to the producers really who took us way back to to those era of hip hop and soul where we get to really enjoy good music. I mean, I'm still stuck in that era, but whatever. So it kind of makes it very easy for me to relate with the song. But that said, the visual for me is a 10/10. Like, the video is a very solid 10. And the whole, in the song and all that, the graffiti, that's how you get to know like a proper hip hop song. But the whole thing just stands out, and it's a love song for those wondering what it means anyway. So I'm not just going to dwell on the love song, but that's pretty much this aspect of the whole thing. Okay, so the next song on the album is Tested, Trusted, and Approved, I think. No, Tested, Approved, and Trusted. And what makes this particular one stand out is because for those who really know Burna Boy very well, he started with dancehall. And surprisingly, he's like going back to the whole thing here in this particular track. And it kind of makes the whole track very sick. It's quite slow from the typical dancehall, but very sick. It's something you want to bop to easily like that. And other than that, you want to talk about the instrumentation of the song, and it's so very good instrumentation. And because of that, it's, for me, just an easy 10 because of the whole dancehall thing. I mean, if you really know Burna Boy from way back and how we morphed into Afrobeat and how we went back, how we would transition between Afrobeat, dancehall, which he today calls Afrofusion, you'll probably understand the fact that, the production of this particular sound, the instrumentation is all like pure magic. If anything, I'm actually dying to want to see the music video, if he at all would probably do it for this particular song, because it's actually very good. And the fact that the whole saxophone thing in the song kind of makes it it's giving off jazz, but not jazz vibes. All right. So, but it's just very slow dancehall fused with a lot of instrumentations to take it away from like the typical dancehall. But I mean, generally, it's a very good song. So for this one, I'll give it a 9. So, Cheat on Me has got to be, like, for me, the best song on the album. And the reason I say that is because a lot of things went down into it. For anybody who is musically inclined, you take your time, you listen to the song, and you listen to the collaboration, like, it's so insane. It's one of the most mellow songs on the album. It's one of the deeper songs as well. And it's one of the richest songs on the album. Now, the first time I listened to this, right, I was blown away by the fact that the whole thing came off on the back of R&B, and then there is rap. So generally, that takes the genre of this particular track to urban R&B. Somebody might argue, but it is what it is. It's urban R&B, or just basically R&B. But the one thing also I like about the fact this song is the lyrics of the song, because Burna Boy focused a whole lot on, his people, his crew, his team, his family, loyalty, and more importantly, his life. And he was very vulnerable in this song, which kind of makes me really appreciate him more, because to be candid, for anybody who really know Burna Boy and how he writes on social media, you will think by looking at him, he comes off as one very big bad person, but he's very sensitive. And I like the fact that he took his time to, pour out a bit of himself on the song and made himself quite vulnerable for people to see. And also, one thing about the song is he talked about his struggles, talked about his pain, talked about his people, maybe where he's from, and he talked about the fact that his people want to jackpot. I'm sorry about. I picked that, and he was like, these people should be given visa, and all they want to do is better their lives. Like they're not terrorists. So in a way, he was kind of speaking for his people, which kind of makes it very funny. But also, he actually, said he's a self-appointed leader because he said he's a leader who wants nothing but the best and simply the best for his people. And he also talked about the fact that I'm not saying you shouldn't criticize me, but if you want to criticize me, be gentle with it. And he talked about the fact that, consider when you want to criticize. And that kind of, if you want to interpret that differently, it's pretty much as saying, I'm human after all, so be careful in your criticisms because eventually it will get to me. And he talked about the fact that he's not been appreciated like Jesus, and he's being cursed on. I mean, I think that reference is like, he's not been appreciated where he's coming from. And if you listen to his interview before the release of the album, where he talked about Afrobeats not having substance, he kept on talking about the fact that people who know him very well are more like across the world. But relating that with what he said, and here, he's now saying that, in spite of all of these things, my people are still my people because I'm like a self-appointed leader over them. And I still love them regardless and want the best for them. So I think he spoke from a place of love in this album, in this track, which kind of makes me like it a whole lot, because usually when you're talking about yourself, people shouldn't see bitterness and hatred and all that's leaking out from your voice into people's ears when they're listening. So if I were to say anything about this, I'm sorry, like when I like a song, I have to pop. But if I were to say anything about it, it's an easy 10 from the visual up onto the collaboration. And let me say something about Dave. Dave made this song super easy. It is a song you want to listen to every single day. The tone of his rap, the whole thing on how he actually picked on the beat was just sublime. It was crazy. It was insane. And I mean, kudos to you, Dave. It just made the whole thing easy. Like, this is one of Burna Boy's features that has been like the easiest ever. Like when you listen to his features, sometimes you see like a clash of whatever and everything, and the other person is trying to project their own uniqueness, but it was almost like both of them were on the same page. The synergy was just great. It was just insane. So for me, Cheat on Me, from the beat, from everything all the way down, this is a solid 10 over 10. So let's talk about Virgil. What about the song? Personally, I think that this is not a spoken word. It was more like an interview conversation with Virgil before he passed on. For the record, for those who don't know him, this particular track is dedicated to Virgil Abloh. He was a fashion designer and entrepreneur and one of the best of his generation. God rest his soul. And the fact that it was like a conversation here, and I think at the end of this discussion, like this audio, Burna Boy said something about, now is the time my phone went off or something like that. So it kind of gives you an idea of the fact that it was a telephone conversation, which kind of makes it very poetic, right? Because Virgil Abloh took his time to talk about a lot of things in the track. It's not a song, it's a track. And he talked about the fact that, he talked about how humans, we as people, consume music like it's a primal thing, like it's a thing that we are born with. We don't know how to do any other thing other than to consume music. And then he also talked about the fact that albums should be like storytelling, and how there should be many layers to albums, like an album. Like there should be many layers to your album, not just sing direct and all that. Then Virgil also in the recording or in the track also talked about poking, in quotes, in his words, poking the veil of a curtain, and how how albums should be promoted. He talked about the traditional method, he talked about the billboards, he talked about the CDs, and he talked about a whole lot of things. And also he ended by talking about how the album should be like a newspaper story, and such that by the time from track to track, you should actually unveil or unfold what the story of the album is like. And it kind of makes it very creative. The fact that there is strings running around his voice, the whole thing, it makes it very deep. But just because he's late does not necessarily mean that he's actually 100% correct. And I say that because not every album is going to tell a story. Not every album is going to tell a story. So for the creative ones, yes, your album should actually tell a story. For people who just decide that I want to do this for the club seekers, for club goers, for parties, for DJs, it doesn't necessarily have to tell a story. So that is just my opinion on that. And everybody's not going to sleep and be in the same direction. All right. I don't want to mention any song that is doing well, but not telling stories. But that said, for people who have attained a very high music level, who want to feel like, you know what, I don't want to talk about profanity anymore. I want to focus on sounds, on genuine sounds. I want to focus on music that make impact. Then yes, your music has to like tell stories, but otherwise it's generally not, it does not generally apply to everybody. But overall, what do I think about it? It's pretty good. I think I'd give it maybe a 7. The reason I say that is because this does not even exactly tell the I Told Them story album, but I get where the whole thing is coming from, because it seems like Burna Boy took like 1 or 2 leaves from what Virgil Abloh said here, because if you see what he's been doing prior to the release of his album, you would actually agree that he actually copied some advice or took some advice from, you know, what Virgil Abloh said before he passed on. So God rest his soul. So let's talk about Big 7 for a minute. This is my second best song on the album. And the reason for that is because naturally for me, I like success stories where people talk about their pain, talk about their journeys. For me, I think it's like the ultimate form of music, because I want to, as a fan, I want to listen to you. I want to hear the things you have to say. I want to listen to your journey. Don't come and tell me, you know, women are good all the time and all that. I know they're good, but I really want to know what's going on in your life. And if you let me in, it makes it very beautiful. It makes your world poetic to me. And that's what Big 7 is all about. And I like the fact that the whole thing started with a shout out to Virgil Abloh, because he said, first of all, big shout out to Virgil. And he went on to also make a shout out to Seyi. I talked about it in my reaction of this particular song, and you can actually find that and listen to that. But that said, I like the fact that he talked about his success here, because for me personally, this should have been the title of the album. Like this album, Big 7 should have been the main song on the album instead of I Told Them. And what makes this very good is the fact that for a lot of people who do not understand and wondering what Big 7 is all about, Big 7 is actually the significant, like, symbolic to him, and that's him celebrating his 7th studio album. And that 7th studio album is I Told Them. So that's him saying that, you know what, this is my milestone, this is what I'm celebrating. And it's very beautiful to actually, listen to the song all through. But the one thing again about this song that makes it very unique is the fact that it took time. I think the last time in my reaction I missed it, and somebody actually corrected me, which I really appreciate. And he talked about the fact that he's been wavy. He talked about his concerts, his sold out venues and all that, Berlin, and a couple of countries and all that. Like, he's been wavy. And he also, Burna Boy will always be Burna Boy. So he actually talked about the fact that if you see me now, you probably know we're not on the same level. We're not like, the same thing, not doing the same thing. And what kind of makes this very, very interesting is the fact that it's not even dancehall, it's not even Afrobeat, it's not Afrofusion, it's actually hip hop, and with it's hip hop, and it's almost as if Burna was rapping all through, which is so versatile, man. He's really so versatile. And in your head, it's okay not to like Burna. You can't like everybody, but one thing you can only take away from him is the fact that he's so versatile that he can probably do anything. So Big 7 for me, I think I would classify as hip hop or rap. And he did his best to like talk about a lot of his, his journey, his success, his sold out venues, and the fact that he's not mate with anybody. For those who listen, he said if you see me, you will not talk to me in public because I'm on a different level, but I'm in a different place. I think that was what he said. So, but generally speaking, I also like the fact that he used his opportunity to talk about family and to talk about loyalty, to talk about he doesn't want square people who can actually fit in. And I mean, that's it about this particular one. So on the scale of 1 to 10, if I were to rate this, and because it's like the whole thing, I'll give it a solid 9 because it's, for me, it's my personal preference, my personal favorite, and one of the best songs on the album. So let me know what you guys think about this one though. So the play for me would actually be like one of the best songs on the album, personally, and I like the song a lot. A lot. My reaction to that song, I didn't even have the fact that I like the song, all the way from the beat up until like the lyrics. I mean, it has got to be like one of the top songs on the album. Now, what makes it very unique is, for those who are wondering, like, what's They Play all about? They Play just is it's a Nigerian parlance where we just say, you know what, just continue to be on serious with your life. And I like the fact that he took his time to talk about, you know, his acquisitions, his wealth, material things, and how he dropped out of school because his teacher didn't have money, and instead he was kind of wondering like, how do I, what's the purpose of school if you, the teacher, does not have money, and how is it actually working money, and the need to have banks open on Sundays because of him. But then I like the chorus, I mean the response to the chorus as well, when he's actually listing his material possessions, and the responses are like, they play, they play, they play. Like, I'm not where you think I am actually. I'm way, 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 way beyond that level. So I think the song generally for me has got to be like one of the best songs there. And the whole from the chorus up until like the pre-chorus, or it's just kind of unique, really. But generally speaking, I would say this one particular song for me has got to be like one of the best on the album. And I have the very weird, crazy attachment with this song. So if I were to rate this, it would be a 9. It would be a solid 9 for me, because I like the fact that, you know, he actually reminded a lot of people who think that he wasn't doing well at all to like, you know what, I'm doing well, and you guys may not actually see the whole thing physically, but these are my acquisitions, these are the things I have. So just keep underestimating me and start thinking, or continue thinking like I won't amount to anything. Just a play. The results are there for you to see. So the next song is City Boy. Now, one interesting thing is the fact that I like how the producers for this particular track sampled Jeremiah's Birthday Sex sound. And for those who don't know it, I think you really need to fall back to it. But I like the fact that they sampled that sound. And, you know, each time I listen to this song, I can't exactly say this is the genre it falls in. It kind of gives off Afrobeat, kind of gives off dancehall, and then there is an element of hip-hop, just like all three rolled into one. So typically I would say it's an Afrofusion. But I mean, that's what it is. That's how I'm able to interpret. But if you think you have a different idea of what the genre might be like, do let me know in the comment section. But that said, City Boy is the most popular song on the album, surprisingly. And one thing that actually makes it very unique also is the beat, right? But other than that, the lyrics is very wild, very, very wild. Like, very, you know, I reacted to this, and in my head I was kind of wondering like, how come there was no warning for this particular sound? So, but regardless, it's a very wild song, and he talked about the fact that, you know what, we City Boys move different. We have a way of doing our things, which is very different from how, not, you know, people in some other part of the world or part of town would do things. And he talked about the fact that he doesn't want a reserved girl, he doesn't want a shy babe, he doesn't want a God-fearing kind of babe. Like, he wants a city one that is so wild and crazy and all that, because that's how City Boys roll. And he talked about money. I mean, how City Boys move around with, we don't move around with just any currency, but some of the hardest currencies in the world. So generally speaking, it's quite surprising that this particular one song stands out and is the most popular of all the songs on the album. But it's a very solid song for me personally, I do think it's a very solid song, and I like the sampling again, like I said earlier, and I like the fact that the whole beat thing, it's quite confusing with the genre, anyways, because you can't close your eyes and say this is what the song is all about. I mean, this is the genre the song is all about. 1 minute you're hearing Afrobeat, next minute hip hop, the next minute dancehall. So it's like all elements rolled into one, which is very good for the whole sound thing, and the fact that they were able to sample Jeremiah's birthday sex sound with all of this genre fused is very confusing but very good at the same time. So if I were to rate this, the amount of creativity put into this, considering the lyrics and considering the first verse, second verse, and all that, I would say it's a 9 for me for this particular one. It's a very solid 9. So Giza, let's talk about Giza for a minute. I'm a fan of very good Nigerian music. Of all Nigerian musicians and all that, Seyi Vibez has got to be one of the very few persons whose songs do not exactly have minutes. And he's more of beat and sound rather than the mini person. Because if you check his sounds, you're probably going to see some elements that come off as strange, right? I don't want to start mimicking anybody, but the fact that Burna Boy was able to leave his Afrobeat, Afrofusion, dancehall comfort zone to be able to come down to the level of Seyi Vibez, to do Seyi Vibez kind of sound in his own album, on his own track, on his own song. It's kind of weird because, I mean, it's weird, but it goes on to prove how versatile Burna Boy really is and how good he really is, which is something to like really applaud him for. Because usually if you are bringing someone on your own song, they should be able to sound or behave like you pretty much, not the other way around, you trying to sound like them. And that goes, I mean, that in a way tells about Seyi Vibez' kind of, versatility. He's not exactly that versatile, but typically speaking, the whole thing about the song, particularly when it comes to the meaning, I think the one thing you can easily pick out is the fact that their music is getting global recognition and global reach, period. The other things about the whole Allahu, Ilailahu, whatever like that, kind of just comes off as wrong. Because I feel people should, songs, you just don't pick rhymes because it rhymes. I mean, how about the fact that your song rhymes and it make meanings? But I think I'm backing at the wrong tree because in the next 10 years, Seyi Vibez is probably never going to come up to sing songs that actually make sense, the way it would make sense to normal people. But that said, generally, I think I applaud Burna Boy for the creativity, for the fact that he was able to leave his comfort zone to actually do this with Seyi Vibez, to almost sound like him. And the fact that the whole thing, for me, the lyrics and the beats is not exactly my kind of thing. So if I were to rate this, I think I would say maybe 4 or 5. But if I'm being generous, I would say 5. If I'm being me, like being me typically, I think I would say 4. But that said, that's it about this song. So the next track on the album is 12 Jewels featuring RZA. Now, it kind of sounds like a whole lot of words of wisdom, but the one thing about this kind of thing is that at this point, I'm beginning to feel that Burna Boy is not even in charge of the entire album. Because how do you put a 27 seconds whatever on an album and call it a track? And I think this is actually one of, like, I kind of think it's fraudulent at this point. It does not even qualify to be a track. Because if you were to, it's actually in the midst of tracks. So in a way, it's kind of like a track. So not it's kind of like a track, it's a track. But it's surprising, and the fact that, what's funny about this whole RZA 12 Jewels, I wouldn't call it nonsense, but what's so funny about it is that RZA first of all said this thing in 2015, all right, on Twitter at the time, now X. But surprisingly, 8 years later, it's making its way into Burna Boy's album. I kind of think that it's ridiculous, to be candid, because right now the influence of the Wu-Tang Clan on the album is becoming so ridiculous. It's almost as if Burna Boy does not have a mind of his own anymore, because for all the songs I've listened to, the influence of Giza, the unnecessary use of the kung fu, whatever, and up until now, the 12 Jews by RZA, you kind of wonder like it's almost like a Wu-Tang Clan takeover right now, and Burna Boy has no control because it doesn't even make sense. Because if anybody were to say this is the number of tracks on the album, things like this should not even be counted, because I don't understand how I am going to purchase an album and then I'll be listening to 12 Jewels of Wisdom. I want to bop to the sound, I want to dance, but this is not just it for me. I mean, anybody who likes Words of Wisdom, this is good for you, but I'm not going to buy an album and say I want to listen to Words of Wisdom. So for me, this is like zero. This has no business being on the song, right? It's supposed to be like an Afrofusion, Afrobeat kind of sound. That's what we want to hear. That's what we want to hear, Burna. I'm not coming on to come and hear featuring Giza, featuring RZA when I can't even hear your voice. And all I'm hearing is like 12 Jewels of Wisdom. And it's a track on the album and it's just 27 seconds. For me, I think that maybe the producers or the record label just found a way to like, you know what? You have to put what we want, and this is what we want. You have to collaborate with Wu-Tang, because typically Burna Boy would not use his church mind to do this on his own album, because I feel right now he's been taken over by the Wu-Tang Clan unnecessarily. So for me, this is not it at all. This is actually the poorest on the album, like the worst song, if I thought it qualifies as song, but the worst track on Burna Boy's album is this. Peace out. So the next song on the list is If I'm Lying, and I have some mixed feelings about this particular song. The reason is because, first off, I'm a huge fan of acoustic sounds, like just a lone acoustic. They make like the perfect, ground for R&B songs. And also the fact that Burna, for whatever reason, seems to be like he wanted to attempt an R&B here. And I kind of have the whole thing. If you listen to this with a earphone or a headphone, you kind of realize that the effects, too many studio effects was used on the song, just because they wanted Burna to like, flow through, string through the song and all that. So it kind of felt like it was, I don't know, this is what I think. It was almost as if whoever, label, whatever label or whoever producer, the main producer on the entire album, or whoever was supervising the album, felt like you should do something on R&B and all that. The song in itself is like a song of promise to somebody. Like, you know what, if I'm lying to you, let all the birds come from the sky, let all the trees, let the oceans dry. But if you really take the time out to like, this is way out of Burna Boy's comfort zone. Not like he did bad, but you kind of wonder why these guys are on a mission to really force this American sound on his brand. Like, I get the whole thing about the fact that he's growing, he needs to cater to a lot of audience, but a lot of people did not like him because he started sounding like American from day one. They didn't like him because he was doing R&B from day one. They liked him because he was in his element. He was doing his sound, and people felt like this is a breath of fresh air. This is very unique. So for me, If I'm Lying would make for a perfect R&B. And even if the song were to like have a very serious head, I felt like they should have actually brought someone on board, featured someone for the song, and then that's the chorus. He would have probably harmonized with that person, probably a female, preferably a female. He would have done the harmony with the person to like bring the whole thing, the color of the whole thing out. But the first verse seemed to be like the best beefed verse. The other ones very shallow. It's almost as if you can't pick out anything from there apart from the chorus. And I'm not a fan of using too many effects on songs. That's how Burna Boy has actually been over the years. Like, he's used less effects, and that tells you how creative it's been. But this one particular song, the whole effect is just ridiculous to the ears. And I personally think that this one song is not Burna. Like, some people are just trying to force a stun on him. So if I were to rate this, I think I would say 4, a solid 4. And it's just we are the Burna Boy's element. It's okay for some people to like it, but for people who are really vast, who really do R&B and listen to R&B very, very well, it's very admirable that Burna Boy is doing this out of his comfort zone. But this is not just it. I think he should have at least featured someone to be able to do this. I mean, this guy should stop forcing foreign sounds on Burna. He is very unique in his ways, and eventually, this whole thing would actually might be trouble for him in the long run. But who am I? What do I know? So, but that's it for this one. Let's move on to the next one. So the next one is Thanks, and I've never hidden my stand on this song from day one, and a lot of people have actually like come to the comment section to say like the song is dope, is dope, is dope. But I'm not saying it's not dope. I'm just saying that this song for me has got to be like this, not track right now. For me, has got to be like the worst song on the list, on the album. And the reason for that is because usually as an artist, when you do your thing, I think it's only in Nigeria we tend to have this sense of I'm representing Africa, I'm coming out of Africa. There are millions of there are thousands of upcoming acts or musicians in the US here, and you don't hear a lot of them say they are representing the United States. It's their craft, it's their own. So when you say, as Burna, when you come out to say, is this a thanks you get, it kind of raises question as to what exactly should people thank you for? What exactly should people say you've done in particular that warrants you to be worshipped, to be thanked? And I think, like I said, I think in one of the reviews, I said Burna Boy is an extremely talented person. He's an extremely versatile artist. But the one problem he seems to be having is that he's very sensitive, and he takes his time to listen to a lot of negative feedbacks. So because of that, he feels that he's not been loved by a lot of people. Truly, he's not been loved by some people, but it's not going to be a lot of people. There are people who enjoy his sound. And there is no one Nigerian artist that is loved all around. It doesn't happen. And there's no one artist all over the world that is loved all around. As insane as Michael Jackson was, he wasn't liked, he wasn't loved by some people. As good as Beyonce is, she isn't loved by some people. I'm not exactly a fan of Beyonce. And as good as Drake is, some people would say Drake is everything, but he isn't loved by some people. So it's okay tonight to not be loved by everybody. But if you want everybody to worship you on the ground you walk on, it kind of it defeats the whole purpose of your victory lap. Because this seventh album for him is supposed to be like, I told them, they said I couldn't do this, they said I couldn't do that, but I told them I broke the barrier, I'm setting a new record, I'm like the biggest deal out of Africa, I'm like the biggest deal out of Nigeria, Odogu is not a nickname, and I feel that should be the theme in the entire song. But when you deviate from I told them, you're now coming down to come and cry and say, is this a thanks you get? In my head as a listener who likes your music, but is very objective enough, I'm going to ask the question, what should people thank you for? How exactly should people thank you? By buying more of your records? By coming on social media to actually say? And the whole thing about the fandom in Nigeria is that it's heavily divided between Burna, between Davido, between Olamide, between Wizkid, mostly between these four guys. So usually, it's okay that this camp will hate you. I mean, that's what it's been playing out for years now, and it's been going strong. But if you're coming out and say this is the thanks you get, and it looks like you're wailing on your own, victory lap, you're giving people grounds to believe that the whole thing is. And for me as a person, I do think that because of the fact that he had already debased Afrobeat in his interview that led up onto the release of his album, I feel like the whole reception of his album, the whole reception of how people perceived his album, how even international organizations and all that saw the album, is as a result of his reaction towards some things. But generally speaking, thanks for me, up from the beat, from the collaboration, and it's not because I'm even hating, honest to God. It's just because I feel that if you are going to even roast Nigerians, bring up a Nigerian that will be able to relate and help you roast Nigerians together and say Nigerians are very bitter people. But you're bringing up J.Cole and you're going left is going right. I mean, it's just not that song for me. And as much as some people, diehard fans, will say, well, we like it like that, eventually you want to look at the numbers each of these tracks are doing on charts. And that way you probably have an idea of the whole thing. But generally speaking, if I were to rate this, me being generous, I would say 5. The whole thing, I don't know, but I mean, that's it. And then finally, Taliban 2. It's the lyrics is very explicit, so I'm not going to focus on that. But I do know that, for me personally, this is the second best collaboration on the album. And the reason for that is because of the synergy between the both of them. Again, Burna Boy showed how versatile he could be, by sounding almost the same way as Byron in delivering this whole piece. And I like the sound, to be candid. The sound for this one is very, very good. But the one thing again, that somewhat confused me, because if you take time to go, find out the lyrics of the song, or you understand what the song is saying, versus what Virgil Abloh said about how albums have to be, have to tell stories. And then you think about I Told Them and this particular Taliban 2, or Talibans II, you somehow get to scratch your head and wonder, like, what's going on? But that said, it's a very good song. I can't take that away. But the whole music has to be spiritual thing doesn't even apply here, because this is very explicit. And this is like the second explicit song on the album. So generally speaking, if I were to rate this, just because of someone who enjoys music and this kind of music, I would say I would give this a very solid 9, because of the collaboration, because of the sound, because of the delivery of the lyrics in itself, not necessarily because of the lyrics. But I mean, that said, the whole thing is actually very good to the ears. The fact that they are just like swapping out lines and coming in and attacking the song from left, right, and center kind of makes it very good. So I mean, that's it for this. So what do I think about the album generally? I think that Burna Boy was, for whatever reasons, I don't know if he was the one who said he wanted to like do some things he's never done before, but when it comes to versatility, I think this album is his best ever album to show how versatile he is, because it probably did like a lot of things like rap, hip hop, urban R&B, a lot of things here, dance, all, almost practically everything. And in my head, I'm like wondering, like, is there really no end to this guy? So creativity wise, I think this is his best album ever, that has come to show how versatile he can be when he needs to. But the one thing also is the fact that the whole album is supposed to be like his parade of victory, his victory lap. But it comes off in a lot of them are sounding very angry, very bitter, and still, moaning at the fact that he's not getting attention and the recognition he deserves, which is actually very wild, because if I was celebrating my milestone, I'm not going to focus on what people are saying about me. Rather, I'll focus on what I have achieved, and that's the way it can only make sense. Also, I hate the fact that the influence of the Wu-Tang Clan on the album is very heavy. It's a lot, and I don't like that one bit. I mean, it's a Nigerian artist, and it's almost as if the whole collaboration with the Wu-Tang Clan is an attempt at making him sound different from the way he would normally sound, maybe knowing full well that he has become a very big global brand. They are trying as much as possible to not make him sound so Nigerian anymore, so they have to like do hip-hop, do R&B, do urban R&B, and a lot of genres that comes with like the American hip-hop. But what I do think personally is I hate the fact that the Wu-Tang Clan's influence on the song, on the album, is a lot. It's ridiculous. I think it's very annoying. And I think this is one mistake a lot of Nigerian artists make. At some point, when you become a global brand, you start thinking about wanting to sound different and forgetting that the whole thing that made the world accept you in the first place is because of your authenticity. So usually when you start, it's good to actually, it's not like I'm saying that as an artist you shouldn't play with other genres, you shouldn't experiment, but it can backfire a whole lot, such that the whole amount of money you and the label invest in doing the whole thing would exactly come back to you at the end of the day, because people will probably not accept the whole change with open arms, and the people you are actually even trying to sound like might even drop you like a bag of hot potatoes in the end. So personally for me, the album is not its best work ever yet. For me, it's not even close. But I mean, there are a couple of very great songs on there, and I think that the whole thing with the Wu-Tang Clan, the features, most of them were not exactly as necessary. Not most of them, like two of them were not exactly as necessary. And the fact that you are sampling voices, playing people's voices, and calling it a track, for me, has got to be like the height of ridiculousness. Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, in my head, I'm wondering, like, it's okay to say you have a 10-track album. Nobody will kill you as long as all of the songs are very hot, back to back and solid. But these days you have the pressure of doing 17, 18 songs, and some songs are not exactly songs in themselves, and they are just like talks, and you're wondering, like, for me, the first song that qualifies as the album title doesn't just cut it. If I were to like say how many songs stand out to me in the entire album, I think it's about 5, not more than 5. But generally speaking, the beats of a whole lot of them actually make sense. But the problem is the fact that a lot of the producers are not even Nigerian. None of them are Nigerians, and they were trying as much as possible to like bring it back home, which they weren't getting. But Burna Boy, being Burna Boy, is actually very versatile enough to do his thing. So if I were to rate the entire body of work, I will say that maybe a 6 for me, for the entire, over 10, because I feel the album should have, for me, I think it was supposed to be very easy, but whatever, they made it very difficult. And I looked at the charts right now, and I also took my time to, like, if you see what a lot of people are saying right now, particularly international organizations, media houses, about the album, it's not exactly as welcoming as how they reviewed African Giant and Twice as Tall, right? Because the whole thing kind of comes off as if, you know, he's deviating from the whole thing, and it's sounding like he's exhausted creatively. And in a way, I think I actually share that bias, because if you look at the whole thing from start to finish, it kind of makes it very difficult for you to sit down and say, this is not exactly the Burna we know. But it's okay to be versatile. It's okay to want to stray out of your comfort zone. But when you have a body of work like an album or a project, and all you do in almost all of the songs is deviate greatly from what you used to do, then you know it's trouble. It's not going to be welcomed with open arms like 100%, the way your previous works have been, you know, accepted and all that. So generally speaking, the album for me is good, but not exactly good enough. And I agree with a lot of media houses who have said that the whole thing is like he's coming off as if he's creatively exhausted. And I do think that, I hope he can actually do better in his next body of work. What drew a lot of people to him was not because it was in urban R&B, it was doing hip hop, it was doing rap. It was because Burna was just Burna Boy, and a lot of people loved him for that. But the whole thing right now is a deviation. He's like trying to accept a whole new audience, and a couple of people who have tried this over time realized that it didn't work. Just stay true to your sound, stay true to what you do, and the sky is like the starting point. Because the moment you start trying to sound like some other person, that's where the problem oftentimes comes for a lot of artists. But generally, that's it for me. Let me know what you guys think. I know a lot of people would actually be very mad at the way I reviewed the entire album and feel like, well, I will feel you could have, it's because you don't like Burna Boy, it's because you don't really enjoy him, it's because you're not a fan, it's because you're a fan of some other person. That's not true. But I mean, I can't convince you more than this, but it is what it is for me. So if you let me know what you guys think by leaving your comments down in the comment section, and come on, please be gentle. criticize me small small. Peace out, guys.